We turn to the third component of the vertebrate skull, the splanchtocranium. It consists of the gill arches, originally supporting the gill apparatus. The first gill arch has been modified into the jaws of primitive gnathostomes and is called the mandibular arch. The upper jaw is the palatoquadrate. The lower jaw is called the Meckel's cartilage. The second arch is also a bit modified for the suspension of the mandibular arch to the chondrocranium, and this is called the hyoid arch. In tetrapods, this arch gives rise to the hyoid apparatus that supports the tongue. From a dorsal to ventral direction, its components are the hyomandibula and then the ceratohyal and basihyal. The remaining gill arches have a generic structure supporting the gills. From a dorsal to ventral position or direction, it consists of the pharyngobranchial, epibranchial, ceratobranchial, hypobranchial, and basibranchial. Here's a preserved shark skeleton. The mandibular arch forms its upper and lower jaws, the palatoquadrate and Meckel's cartilage, respectively. The hyoid arch is what comes next, which helps suspend its jaws to the chondrocranium. The subsequent gill arches support the gills. Let's talk about jaw suspensions. The suspensorium of a vertebrate is the apparatus by which the jaws are suspended onto the skull. And this has changed significantly throughout vertebrate evolution due to the remodeling of some skull bones. So Cardong provides 6 types of jaw suspensions. Paleostyle is simply the primitive vertebrate condition where the mandibular arch has not even been modified into jaws. It's just a generic gill arch. Primitive gnatostomes, like placoderms, have or exhibit what's called as euotostyle, where the mandibular arch is suspended by itself to the chondrocranium without assistance from the hyoid arch. Sharks exhibit what's called as amphistyle, where the jaws are suspended at 2 points, one via the orbital process of the palatoquadrate and 2 via the hyoid arch. Bony fishes exhibit hyostyle, where the jaws are mainly suspended via the hyoid arch, specifically the hyomandibula. Most tetrapods exhibit metotostyle, where just like the primitive gnatostomes, the jaws are suspended by themselves without any assistance from the hyoid arch. But specifically, the jaws are suspended via the quadrate bone. In metotostyle, the hyomandibula, previously suspending the jaws, is now co-opted or recruited into the middle ear cavity to become the stapes bone, one of the 3 middle ear bones. And finally, in mammals, craniostyle is a further derivation of the metotostyle condition. Jaws are still suspended on its own with no assistance from the hyoid arch elements, but it is suspended via the squamosal or temporal bone here. The quadrate bone being co-opted into the middle ear as the incus. So here's to show the different types of suspensorium among modern vertebrates. Sharks have amphistyle, wherein the palatoquadrate has an orbital process latching onto the chondrocranium, while the hyoid arch provides additional support. The mandibular joint of bony fishes is formed between the quadrate and the articular bone somewhere here. These are derivatives of the palatoquadrate and Meckel's cartilage, respectively. The jaws are suspended via the hyomandibula, and this is called hyostylic jaw suspension. Non-mammalian tetrapods, as exemplified by a crocodile, also have a quadrate and articular bones forming the mandibular joint, but the hyomandibula plays no role in jaw suspension anymore because it is now the stapes inside your ears. The quadrate, being fused to the brain case, carries the mandible. So it's through the quadrate that the jaws are suspended through. In mammals, the mandibular joint is formed between the temporal bone, specifically the squamous portion, and the dentary bone. Actually, there are no bones in the mammalian lower jaw other than the dentary. It's just made of one bone, the dentary. The quadrate became the incus, and the articular bone, previously seen in reptiles, became the malleus in the middle ear. I've already mentioned some of the phylogenetic fates of the gill arch components, notably that of the mandibular and hyoid arches. So for example, the hyomandibula was the first to be recruited into the middle ear to become the stapes. The palatoquadrate, here serving as the upper jaw in primitive natostomes, gave rise to the quadrate bone. And then the Meckel's cartilage, here the lower jaw of primitive natostomes, became the articular bone. The quadrate articular eventually joined the stapes in the middle ear to become the incus and the malleus, respectively. The remaining gill arches were also extensively reorganized in the tetrapod neck, giving rise to the tracheal and laryngeal cartilages, the epiglottis, and also the tongue skeleton. So consult table 7.2 in Cardong for a detailed enumeration of these phylogenetic fates of the gill arches. To wrap up, the rich and complex history of our skulls demonstrates the important principle of evolutionary remodeling. Our skull did not simply pop out into existence, fully formed and well designed for its current purpose. We saw that although it appears as a single unified whole protecting our brains and sense organs, the skull has been derived separately from three phylogenetic sources, each with its own evolutionary history. The chondrocranium served as the primitive brain case and the sense capsules protecting our sense organs in the head. The dermatocranium, which was derived from the scales of extinct bony fishes. And then there's the splanchnicranium, which originally served the gills but now makes up much of our hearing, feeding, and speaking apparatus. Beyond just a reminder of our mortality, our skulls connect us to what paleontologist Neil Shubin refers to as our inner fish.